MLB DFS picks, Sunday, July 28th, the out of the base path picks. The picks that don't get mentioned as much on the big shows or the big articles because they simply just can't cover every single thing. And there's not always the demand to cover every single thing. The shows will go on forever. Who are we starting with? Joey Cantillo. Cantillo more than likely will be mentioned on these shows. How deep will they break him down? Well, we'll see, because I'm going to break him down. Joey Cantillo, $4,000. We like that. We don't like the matchup against Philadelphia. We got to be honest there. But at $4,000, as long as he doesn't completely blow up, it can work. Now, there is blow-up threats, and we'll talk about that in a second. So who is Joey Cantillo? Number 13 prospect for Cleveland, top 10 pitching prospect. The real quick summary of him: high K pitcher, high walk pitcher. And that second part, the high walk, can't be understated enough. His walks have actually gotten worse as he has developed. So the strikeouts are very appealing. It's sexy. It's exciting. A lot of upside. But this play could go down and turn into a dumpster fire quickly if he has his control issues. That's the downside. A part of this, if we get a $4,000 pitcher that's just okay, that might be a better spot against Philadelphia, because we don't really need 20 fantasy points at $4,000. Although he has that upside with his high K rate, but he also has the ability to walk, have control issues, and this is not a matchup where we really want to see that. So again, high K, high walks. Hawaii high school kid straight to San Diego, decides not to go Kentucky. San Diego loves him because of his changeup, but he doesn't have much heat on the fastball, sitting in the high 80s. Eventually, Cleveland sees him, and Cleveland picks him up as part of the famous Clevenger deal. So he comes over to Cleveland. Cleveland does what they do best, which is develop pitching. They've won a lot of Cy Youngs in the last couple decades. Milwaukee's another team we'll talk about in a second. Really good developing pitching. And what do? Well, one, they just wait for him to mature. He was 18. Obviously, you can increase muscle mass and strength, and that fastball can come to life. So maybe we're giving Cleveland too much credit. It's just nature. Cantillo is a big, strong man, and that's where his fastball came from. Either way, big-time prospect now. His velo is up to 92, 3, 4, 5. It's got a lot of movement on the fastball. It's a really good pitch. So now you have a changeup that was already really great and a fastball. Injuries slowed down his progress. Still, he's only 24 years old, making his debut. Not bad. COVID era slowed down his progress. This year, he began the season on the IL, went to Columbus, has pitched well for the Clippers, 2.79 ERA, good ground ball rate, strikeout rate through the roof, walk rate through the roof. Sometimes I don't want to forgive Cleveland a little too much credit. But then again, you look at like a guy like Zach Plesac and Aaron Savali, who got smashed in yesterday, who I kind of liked in the morning, and then changed my mind later in the day. Thankfully, I did. But you see these pitchers that are in Cleveland, they're fine. Now Plesac's toiling in the minors for Los Angeles, and Savali's back end at the Brewers for the time being. I think you got to give Cleveland some credit. They get a lot out of their players. If you look at Cantillo this year in the minor leagues, 15.5% swinging strike rate, 65% contact. He clearly has good stuff. It's not a matter of his fastball or changeup not working. It's simply lack of control. Now, as one scouting report says, the fastball moves so much that the lack of the control is really not going to hurt him that much. He'll be fine. And even with the changeup, the lack of control, because he gets so many swings and misses, he's going to be fine. But against professional hitters like the Philadelphia Phillies that are good and know how to stay off pitches, really could get him into trouble. So that's Cantillo in a nutshell. He's got great stuff. The command is going to be the thing that either makes this play work or not. I would rather have an average prospect come up at 4,000 who lacks upside but has control and gets me just enough points. That's not the case here. This is clearly a boom or bust play. I don't think there's going to be an in-between. I'll take in-between, but The command thing, that's your concern. So if you want to fade Cantillo because his ownership is going to be really high, don't think that's a terrible option at all given the command issues. Next on our list, and there's not a lot of options here on the main slate, John Gray. We talked about John Gray in his previous outing. There weren't a lot of options in that mid out of the base path pick tier, but he was in a great spot. He went out and had a terrific game. 5 strikeouts, 7 innings pitched, no earned runs. You're never really going to get more strikeouts than that with John Gray. Never really been a strikeout pitcher despite having a lot of good stuff back in Colorado, that high heat. Just a good pitcher. And on display in the last matchup, which was a pretty soft matchup. Gets Toronto again, which it's not a great offense. It really isn't. And it is a place you can attack. 7,700, Texas at Toronto. You know, Gray technically has one of the worst xFIPs of his career, but his ERA at 3.73 is actually one of his better ERAs ever. So again, just one of those pitchers who the advanced metrics never like because he's not striking out a bunch of people. He just goes out there and pitches old school. Wins games, limits runs. Now, fantasy, we do need advanced metrics. We need a lot of points. But when you look at a slate where you may not necessarily see guys that are really going to pop off, then you are fine to say, all right, well, I can't get a big number, but I'll take a good number. I'll take a good return. And Gray can go 7 innings in this game, just like he did in the last one. He's increased his slider usage, as we mentioned in the last pod, and it's working for him. Hopefully he continues that. You look at Toronto, the lineup does not scare you whatsoever. You have Vlad at the top. That's about it. But no power, 149 ISO. WOB is below average. WRC plus, we'll say, is average. Now, the strikeouts aren't there. But if we dissect that, that's fine. John Gray doesn't try to strike batters out. So if we think of it in this context, we look at some offenses and we say, well, like Seattle, their weakness is striking out. But they still score runs, they still win games. But you put a strikeout pitcher against Seattle, they're done. You put a regular pitcher against Seattle that doesn't strike people out, then that pitcher cannot take advantage of their weakness, and they're in a bad spot, and Seattle can win that game. So we reverse that. Toronto's weakness isn't striking out. Their weakness is they're weak. They don't hit the ball very well. And so the fact that John Gray doesn't strike people out doesn't matter. He doesn't try to strike you out. He lets you get yourself out. And that's what Toronto likes to do. They like to get themselves out by making bad contact. And so he actually fits this pretty well. Whereas if you got a high strikeout guy against Toronto, maybe they don't do as well because they're trying to strike out batters that don't strike out. And the approach needs to be different. So the matchup kind of works for John Gray. Worth considering. Tobias Myers. We talk about Tobias every 5 days. So I will try not to go too deep into Myers. As we know, bounce around teams, finally ends up in Milwaukee. They fix him. He's been great since entering the starting rotation. He's got a great fastball. Changeup cutter, okay. Sliders kind of coming to life a little bit. Strong pitches. I think if we look at spin rate for Tobias Myers, his fastball has the most spin rate. Really good, really strong, not worried. We look at his last outing, he had 6 strikeouts, 5 innings pitched, 2 earned runs. It's pretty good. And you can check out previous pods where, he had a game that wasn't very good against Colorado, but he gave up the runs early and then settled in. Another game where you gave up 2 home runs to the Cubs, who fare well versus the changeup, which is one of his stronger pitches, wasn't really working for him on that day. There's a lot of excuses and asterisks that I can throw out. But the real big thing that we want to know is Tobias Myers has been great since jumping onto Milwaukee. Very solid, very strong. Obviously with a 3.14 ERA. But what you really like is he has this plus fastball and a very good slider. And he is facing no other than the Miami Marlins. Miami had a good day yesterday, but again, Aaron Savali, who has been known to give up a little bit too much contact, a little bit too much power, And there were some left-handed bats that matched up really well against him, and that was that. Miami coming into today against Tobias Myers. This is not a good matchup for them. They're near the bottom of the league in fastballs, near the bottom of the league in sliders. And that's what Tobias Myers is going to feed them a consistent, steady diet of. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Toby Mai go 7 innings and get 7 strikeouts and maybe only allow 1 run or 2 runs. Maybe even shut him out completely. He has not disappointed for the most part since we've been talking about him. Again, not a lot of other guys to talk about in this slate. So you end up talking about guys like Miles Michaelis, 7,900. Seems a little bit of expensive. So we look at Miles and we break down what's this guy been doing lately. And really, the story on Miles is nothing really ever changes, does it? Same guys. Is he on the slate here? There he is. 6,300. The price I had up was a projected price. So, hey, 63, I'll take that. Miles, last start 14.7. We'll take that today. Against Atlanta, 2 earned runs, 1 homer. The Chicago game scares you. Gave up way too many fly balls. He usually relies on getting the ground ball out. Elevating the ball too much, too many fly balls, 4 home runs. But then you look at this July 8th game, which should be more important because he's facing Washington again today. Last time he faced them, 6 1/3, no earned runs, 3 Ks. We're not going to get any strikeouts from him. But when he's generating ground balls and not giving up too many fly balls, it'll work. I don't know what the temperature is in St. Louis and if it's going to be really hot and the ball is going to be flying. That could be something to look into. Obviously, it's not a really sexy play. But when you dig down at the bottom and trying to find some cheaper options, there really aren't a lot of guys to go to. Obviously, Cantillo. You're not taking the Detroit pitchers. Vasquez has too tough of a matchup. Sometimes I'm interested in his stuff and what he could be. Former Yankee prospect, but you're not taking him against that offense. Tyler against Milwaukee. I'd like picking on Milwaukee. Not today. I don't like facing Kansas City. I don't want to have anything to do with the Dodgers offense. Peterson matches up real poorly against some of these right-handed bats at Atlanta. I don't want to go there. I don't want to face San Diego at the moment. So then we end up at Gray. We could also talk about River Ryan, I guess, as well. He is on here. Yeah. Made his debut last week. Was pretty interested in Mr. River Ryan. And it was a decent start. We'd pull it up. Was either number 3 prospect. I'm going to go back and check my notes. So we went 5 1/3. 4 hits allowed, no earned runs. Didn't generate a lot of strikeouts. That's fine. San Francisco's not the biggest strikeout team. Although San Francisco does struggle against, or average against right-handed pitching. Either way, 73 pitches, pretty solid day. Now you're going to have to spend $7,700 for a pitcher that just scored 12 fantasy points. Against Houston, probably not. If we get River Ryan cheaper someday, maybe it'll happen. Maybe it won't. But if that day comes, and again, there's been a couple times this week where, Kyle Harrison, we loved him the other day. He exploded. Yesterday, we were talking about the other Philly kid, Tyler Phillips. And I said, I don't know. Don't really love the matchup against Cleveland. Might be, we want to look and see what Phillips and his fancy sweeper can do. But it might be a little bit too early. It wasn't too early. Tyler Phillips went out through a freaking complete game. So here I am now saying, River Ryan, we like his stuff. We like what he did in the minors. We like his development. What was his development? What is his background? All right, give me a second. I'll tell you. So Ryan, number 2, LA prospect, number 34 in baseball, smashed through the minors. San Diego wanted him to be a hitter. Los Angeles said, we'll take him, and he's just going to be a pitcher for us. Fresh arm because in college he mainly was a hitter. So he is still developing. At AAA this year, 10.4 Ks per nine, 2.76 ERA, and that is in the hitter-friendly PCL. 60% ground ball rate, fastball in 97s, good sinker, good curve, decent slider and cutter. The stuff is there. The matchup is tough. So if we're just playing off what we said yesterday with Tyler Phillips, the stuff is there. He has been good in his starts at the major league level. The matchup was tough, but he absolutely shut down Cleveland. So you want to jump in early on River Ryan, what I think is a high price. Why not? The analysis has been pretty on over this week. Kyle Harrison, days before that, got a plane, goes out and strikes out 11. So I wouldn't completely take River Ryan off your board. But you know the guys that I've committed to a little bit early, which are Cantillo. I think John Gray is a decent value. Toby is a decent value. What's Toby's actual price? Not the projected price that I had. 77 comes in at 82. That's not terrible. Let's talk quickly about some guys that aren't on the slate, just to, if you're playing other slates or just want to talk baseball, because it's fun. Hunter Green should be able to just destroy Tampa. 24% K rate against righties, 132 ISO, 296 WOBA. Having a terrific season, was an all-star this year, 10.2 Ks per nine, 0.8 home runs per nine, which is excellent for a Cincinnati pitcher, doing a really good job of keeping the ball in the ballpark, limiting home runs per fly ball, 3.14 ERA. It all checks out. Last game, 7 innings, no earned runs, 7 strikeouts. That's impressive. Great game, I believe, at Atlanta. And then if you look on the road, when he gets out of Great American Small Park, his ERA drops to 2.19. The WOBA 2.47. Home runs per nine, as we mentioned, is 0.8 on the year, but on the road it's just 0.5. And for whatever reason, his ground ball rate increases by 6%. So 100 Green on the road, the thing. If you can bet on the Reds, maybe that's where you go. Maybe you bet on 100 Green props. Other guys not on the slate that I just like to talk about. It'll be a little Gilbert Diaz update. Big fan of Diaz. Came up recently. Great in the minors. What is the story on Mr. Diaz? 3.27 ERA this year in his AAA. Again, in the PCL. Not an easy place to limit runs. His last start before being called up, 13 batters. Struck out, 6 scoreless innings. Was absolutely phenomenal. Comes up, faces Atlanta. They had 4 hits. He struck out 5. A great start. Next start, again, very good. Fastball and slider pretty much are what he is using. Mixes in a little bit of a knuckle curve. He's got 3 pitches. Fastball, slider, knuckle curve. First 2 games, he threw a lot of fastballs, a lot of sliders. Was great. So what happened in the last outing? As you can see on the screen, 7 earned runs, 3 innings pitched, no strikeouts. 2 good starts, 1 really, really poor start. But what happened to Mr. Gilbert Diaz? Well, my explanation for him would be that Kansas City rolled out 4 left-handed bats and then had 2 strong right-handed bats in Witt and Sal. And for whatever reason, Gilbert went in there and decided he's just going to throw fastball and knuckle curve. Did not throw the slider that had been very beneficial to him. Again, it was a small sample size because he got knocked out in 3 innings. But fastball and knuckle curve didn't work against. My assumption is that you get 2 good right-handed bats, and then he didn't feel comfortable using the slider against the lefties, and the matchup went haywire. That being said, he's facing Pittsburgh today. They've got a lot of left-handed bats, but they're not very good left-handed bats. He could get away with it. But if he's not going to throw that slider and it's just going to be fastball and knuckle curve, and he's going to go out timid and afraid to attack the left-handed bats, then yeah, it could be a long day for Gilbert Diaz. We only have a 3-game sample size. We'll see what happens against Pittsburgh today. On paper, the matchup against Pittsburgh, not bad. It should be fun. But when you get deeper in, you're looking at that pitch mix from Kansas City where it didn't work. That's a bit of a concern. Carlos Rodon, just want to talk about him real quick. Throughout most of the season, he was winning games, but it really wasn't impressive. He's getting a lot of run support and just going out and just being a decent pitcher. Not really doing anything advanced metric-wise. Well, recently he's not winning, but the advanced metrics are pretty awesome. Last 5 games for Rodon, 13.5 Ks per 9, a 3.3 xFIP. So Rodon is doing great advanced metrically. Traditionally now, it's reversed. He's not winning games. His ERA is 6.39 over that span. Now, one of the problems is that he has a 2.5 home runs per 9. Again, if you look at the advanced metrics, they kind of, well, what xFIP will do is to mitigate the impact of home runs on what a pitcher does or doesn't do. Ballpark wise, fly ball wise, etc. And it looks heavily at striking out, not walking guys, making specific pitches. And Rodon makes specific pitches. He can strike people out. He doesn't walk a lot of batters. xFIP looks good over the last 5. But the reality is he is still giving up a lot of home runs. 2 really good games against Tampa in that 5-game stretch. He also has some high BABIP games during that stretch, which probably hurts his traditional stats, but it's not necessarily reflected in his advanced metrics. Either way, moving forward, Rodon is definitely looking like a fantasy player. If you're a Yankees fan, maybe you're not that excited. Maybe you'd rather just him go back to winning games and not putting up cool points on the scoreboard, but no one cares about Yankees fans. We want fantasy points. There's your slate for today. Thinking about Miles. Liking Toby as always. Thinking about John Gray. Joey Cantillo. Yeah, we're going to jump on that bandwagon. And then also in the middle tier is River Ryan. Don't love the matchup, but the kid's got the stuff. Got that first start under his belt. Maybe he's feeling more comfortable and confident. Well, good luck. You're going to face a real offense today. Buckle up, Buttercup. Thanks for joining me. Like, subscribe, share.